We'll get started in a couple of minutes. Jen, can you let us know if things are working out okay so far? Excellent. So I have 6:57. We can wait another few minutes, or we should wait a few minutes. Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday, April 28th meeting of the West Hartford Public Schools Board of Education. We will be meeting tonight virtually, as you know, and so just a couple of notes before we get started with the rest of the meeting. To reduce background noise, please remember to keep yourself on mute until it is time for you to speak. When you do wish to speak, please use the chat function and just put a question mark in the chat box. And then I'll let you know when it's your turn. And in order to allow the live stream the moment that it takes to catch up when a new person is speaking, when you begin speaking, please introduce yourself by name, first and last name. And by the time you finish that, probably the camera and the microphone will start picking you up. This is also helpful for people who are watching us on WHC TV's website or YouTube channel, because we don't have our nameplates in front of us like we do when we're at the board meeting. So with no further ado, we can go ahead and get started, and I'll ask Cammie if you can please call the roll.
Ms. Aronson?
Present.
Mr. Levine?
Present. Good evening.
Ms. Poland?
Present.
Mr. Payson?
Present.
Dr. Steinberg?
Here.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson?
Here.
Mr. Zdanowicz?
Present.
Student Representative Kenya Ferreira?
Here.
And Isabella Gong.
Here. Sorry, technical difficulties.
No worries. Okay, last time I put a flag up on the screen. I can try to figure out how to do that, or if anybody has a flag in their home, we can go ahead and do the pledge. And Kenya, can you lead us in the pledge this evening?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. Okay, I do not believe we have a revision to the agenda order this evening, and unfortunately, no student participation. Are there any members of the public who wish to make comments on a topic of your choosing?
There's nobody online from what I'm moderating here, Deb.
All right, thank you. So we will move on to agenda item number 4, unfinished business. And item A, adoption of the 2020-2021 Board of Education budget. The recommendation is that the Board of Education review the superintendent's proposed budget, and I think this amount is going to change, make revisions as necessary, and adopt the 2020-2021 Board of Education budget. So let's start with a motion to, what do we want to say? Motion to accept or review, motion to review the budget. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ari. And a second? Who was that?
Second. Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda. Okay. I think at this point, I do want to turn it over to Tom to tell us a little bit about what's happened since this budget was first proposed and how we got to where we are today. And then we'll turn it over to the rest of the board members in case there are any proposed revisions.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Deb. As we look at, I'm going to call up, when we looked at the initial budget that I proposed for 2020-2021 was $174,670,000. During the workshop last week, we proposed these changes, which would eliminate the math coach at the middle school level, eliminate school supply budget increase, consolidate bus routes and reduce by 3, Reduce utility budget through use of current year savings and utility services fund. Reduce pension contribution to town due to revised actuarial calculation. Reduce health budget due to lower premium rates. Then we talked about funding from the retiree health reserve and then transferring the current year surplus to a non-lapsing account to fund to help fund this year's budget. Then we look at what we're left with, and what we're left with is a total amount of $170,073,528. So a percent change of 0.75% is the new revised superintendent's budget. Now, you don't have to accept those changes, nor do you have to accept the changes initially. Liz will be working on a spreadsheet on the side, and any changes that you make will be added or deducted, and she'll update us at the end of the meeting or during the meeting where we're at. But right now it'd be $170,073,528 is the requested budget.
Great, thank you. I think we've had some time to ask our questions in our budget workshops and offline. So at this point, I'd like to open it up if anyone would like to propose any revisions. And the revisions would be made to the new budget proposal that we saw last week. And if you want to make any suggestions, you can put a question mark in the chat box. Okay, well, I'll start. Oh, Mark, go ahead.
Sorry, technical difficulties again. I tried to push that question early. Tom, we previously asked a question, or I did, about the pay to play. I don't know if Liz is available to talk about that. I believe I proposed, well, there was a couple different proposals. The 150 times 4, I believe, and then the 175 times 3. And no more than that. And I just wanted to know if you were able to calculate any numbers and what that would cost. And I'm hoping you guys can hear me.
Yes, sure. We were able to look at that. Liz, I don't know if you want to take over. I'm prepared to, but go ahead if you're ready.
Certainly. So Mark, we had looked at a couple of different options. One of the requests was to look at if we kept the per sport at 175, but with a cap of 3 sports. That would be a revenue loss of $17,150. If instead we kept the cap at 4 but dropped the rate to $150 per sport, it'd be a loss of revenue of $50,000. And then I think the third one you had asked is if we dropped it to 150 and also capped it at 3 sports, that would be a loss of revenue of $64,700. And these are all estimates based on how many students were participating in sports at a particular point in time.
No, that's great. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for that third one. I believe that's the one we talked about a couple years ago. So I'm open for discussion if anybody wants to talk about it. I'm certainly, I know given the times and, you know, kids not really being able to actually participate in sports is actually, you know, some of us, and I can't say all of us, but, you know, some of us pray for a rainy day sometimes with the sports, and that we can, you know, we don't have to juggle 100,000 things a day. But I tell you, in these times, you know, you wish you had the sports back, and you don't want rainy days. So, you know, as a big sports proponent for all students, I'm open to discussion on any of this.
So, Mark, did you want to make a proposal to change our current pay to play to either option A, B, or C?
You know, I think my option prior COVID would have been different than it is today. And given that I think a lot of parents may be out of work and certainly not making the amount that they used to. I think I come up with a different proposal than I think I would prior to COVID, because I was just looking for a little bit of relaxation in this, and I'm certainly open for discussion on this, because I think a lot of parents are maybe potentially coming in the fall, and hopefully we're playing sports in the fall, may have to do some catch up with their family finances. So as Liz proposed, maybe we look at 150 times 3 at a $64,700 differential. So I guess I would make a motion. Well, I would open it for discussion, but I'd make a motion that we keep it at, or change it to 150 times 3, and it would be a $64,700 increase. And I, as I mentioned earlier, I think that's different than what I probably would have proposed pre-COVID. But I think that maybe this, because I think parents may be hurting after this, and once we get back to this might be a little bit of cushion. Every little bit helps, and I know kids with multiple families with multiple children playing sports, it gets expensive. So that I'll put that on the table.
Great. Is there a second to that motion? And again, the motion would be our current pay-to-play cost is $175 per sport, capped at 4 sports. The motion would be to reduce the pay-to-play down to $150 per sport and capped at 3 sports, which I think is where we had it a couple of years ago. Is there a second?
I'd love to second that and open it up for discussion. Sean.
Great. So Sean Payson has seconded that motion. Does anyone have any questions about this proposal or any discussion points to make? Amanda and then Ari.
No, I'm glad it was raised and that we're revisiting it. I also feel like I have different thoughts on it now, given our situation, and appreciate it coming to the table. So I just wanted to be supportive of that.
Thank you. And Ari?
So maybe it's already been addressed, but is the pay to play already kind of, is it based on need? Do we address it by need like we do with like reduced lunch?
Yeah, we make it a point, no child won't be able to participate based on their inability to pay. So it's an automatic tie-in to free and reduced lunch. So any of those kids we're aware of, and that ties in. But then anybody else, we also ask them just write a note either to the principal, to the athletics office, or to the coach and just explain we're having a tough time right now. We haven't said to a kid, you can't participate because of finances. Now, has it been a barrier to somebody not? I mean, I don't know that. That hasn't been in my time something that's come forward. But historically, anybody with need is automatically either reduced or the fees eliminated.
And is that pretty publicly known, or is that something parents would have to like search out to know that?
I think by the parents that are on free and reduced lunch, I think they're aware of it. And in the newsletters, when both Julio and Dan from the 2 high schools talk about it, there's always a piece in it that if there's difficulty paying, please let us know. So that is part of the notification anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Mark?
Sorry. And that's a good question, Ari, is, and the reason I brought this up originally is, we always bring our own experiences to the table. And I knew of 2 particular families that it was tough on, and it was tough on for just one child. And the other family had multiple, and it just happens to be personal experience. And they weren't comfortable enough to go forward asking that question. So that's a great question you asked. The free and reduced lunch is, I guess very, there's a link there, if you will. But for those that aren't, but still have issues, I just bring up those two stories that I knew personally. So I just, it's, some people are embarrassed by it, quite honest.
Ari?
Sorry. Well, I'm just thinking in terms of if it were to remain the same coming out of this COVID crisis, I do think that people would be more apt. And if you made it specifically saying or inviting to families, we're coming back to school. We understand that people have had different, job loss. And we would really like to be sensitive to that regarding our sports. It's just a thought.
I will say, Ari, that's a discussion we've had both about fundraising with PTOs, where I've said this is not the time we're going to be doing fundraising for different activities. We've had it in the past in 08, 09 with things like AP exams when there were struggles with a lot of people, and that maybe didn't appear to be people that were struggling. But at the same point, all of a sudden you're out of work and you're not getting a paycheck and you're concerned. And just like sports, with 4 sports or with 3 AP exams, once no individual one is off-putting, but when you have multiple kids and it's certainly understandable.
Yeah, I'll just add that I strongly support this. I think it's a small thing that we can do to help families. We're still going to be charging for sports, and so I think we're still going to see families who are in need of having a fee waiver for their kids to play sports. But this is something that I've been thinking about for at least a year, and I would like us to be able to make this change to help families in our district. Are there any additional comments or questions on this particular proposal? Sean?
Having been a 2-season coach, soccer and tennis for a long time, I just wanted to say that it's nice to see a district that has policies like some teams that have a no-cut policy. And so you end up getting these enormous programs like track and field and cross country and tennis, and then they get known statewide. But behind the scenes, you don't realize that the town is also helping out a few members of those teams by helping them out by making it happen. But there's a lot of other hidden costs. So whatever we set the number at, there's also equipment that needs to be purchased that's also going to be difficult for parents. And I hope that all of our coaches are not requiring their athletes to purchase too many materials to be on the team and to feel like they're a part of it. I think it's a group effort. So I think if we can do something small, that says a lot. But I'd also like to see, and as a coach, I don't like it, but when buses are combined, when they have combined teams traveling to away matches, when we have hard decisions to make on, can we reduce a coach in this program that maybe we don't need? I would just like to see every aspect be looked at. But I would like to see a little movement on our end just to show that we're trying. Thank you.
And Mark?
Sean, you made some good points. Again, the people that don't come forward to talk about these things, and I have 2 particular stories. So I don't know what that represents in the statistical analysis if they're only coming to me twice, but it does go out and lend a hand to show that we're thinking about them. And I think and you know what, at the end of the day, you guys know I'm a fiscal conservative, but $64,000 in this type of budget is really, I didn't do the math, is it's way past the decimal point. And I think this goes a long way, and I think people will appreciate it. And it'll go a long way. And there's still the fundraising that takes place, the concessions, the door sales as well. So that all helps in this, and I think the analysis Liz did took into corporation of all that to account for the equipment and everything. So again, I support this. Obviously, I've made this as a point, but I just think in this time, again, I told you earlier, I think it would have been different pre-COVID, but I really do think that this would be a nice benefit for the kids that play sports and their parents.
Thank you. I think Lorna had a comment to make.
I do. Thank you, Lorna Thomas Farquharson. I too am in support of this motion. And I want to say, Mark, I can't say I speak, I'm not going to say I know your thoughts, but I will say to all fairness, I do recall you bringing this up prior to COVID-19. And I'm saying that for a reason. I think it's important for us to recognize the thoughts that we're putting into considering this motion apply prior to COVID-19, during this pandemic, and will continue to apply thereafter. I appreciate the heightened sense of awareness that all of us have as it relates to the economic challenges that families have. And I encourage for us, which I strongly believe we will, to continue to have that mindset when things stabilize over time, because we still will have families that that have challenges, that are struggling. So Mark, again, thank you for proposing this. And I encourage us to continue to think with this lens and decisions moving forward.
Sean, you have another question?
Yeah, it's a concern about moving forward because I would love to reduce the cost for families, especially those families that have, multiple children playing multiple sports, and I can only imagine how much that can cost. But the benefit of it to me is essential. But the main concern I have is, and this might be more of a question for Tom or somebody else, in that we don't know when the seasons will start. We don't know. What rules there might be. I know the seasons haven't officially been canceled, but a lot of the spring tournaments have. I guess my concern is we also don't know how many people are going to pay. And I know that there are some people that don't pay, and that could be an issue coming around. And the last thing I would want to do is reduce our income and then have to kind of backtrack and find the money elsewhere, because the last thing I would want to do is to not have a sport run because we don't have enough money. So I was wondering if maybe Tom could speak to that, what his thoughts are.
Yeah, well, it's a good point, Sean. It's since I've been attached to West Hartford Public Schools, I don't like pay for play. I've always justified it in my mind with the idea that youth sports people pay. And then all of a sudden in high school, when you have to pay coaches and pay officials, now they're not paying. So I get the dichotomy of people can pay. And I do want to say that, and I just checked, Ari, right on the form, the first big block about sports is if you can't afford this. So just to go to your previous point. But Sean, I think that I don't think mid-year, once we've signed contracts or anything, that we're going to stop a sport because we don't get the same income. It's like anything else mid-year. We always try to put the kids first. And so once we've made, my philosophy in education always is, once you made a promise to a kid, if you have French 3 for juniors, and even if only 12 sign up for senior year, you've made that commitment that they can take French 4. So it's kind of, you can't backtrack on those promises. So year to year, I don't anticipate that we'd back away mid-year from a sport if we have sports. But I do worry about, anything that we take away from this, whether it's 10,000, 15,000, or 64,000, it is going to come from, if all of a sudden, if we pass a budget and instead of 64,000, because less people pay, it's 75,000, 80,000, well, of course, we're going to make that up because it's that much in the scheme of this budget. But at the same time, if we have a bunch of things do that, but I think we all know, looking at this year's budget with all the uncertainties, that what we're passing right now is I think it's best to describe it as a hope. But the reality on the ground of what's going to happen next year is going to be very difficult to manage with all of these. So I know it's not a definite answer like, well, yes or no. It just is, I think you're hitting something that we're all concerned with for next year.
Okay, other questions or thoughts on this item? And if not, Cammie, can you call the roll? We're going to need to call the roll on each item. That'll be much easier for folks who are watching.
Ms. Aronson,
Can you just repeat? I just want to make sure that what I'm voting for, that I'm understanding what the yes and the no means relative to the motion.
So a yes means that you would be voting to move the pay to play down to $150 per sport, capped at 3 sports. And that is in addition to the budget of $64,700.
Okay, my vote is yes.
Mr. Levine,
I vote in favor.
Mr. Payson,
Yes.
Ms. Poland,
Yes.
Dr. Steinberg,
Yes.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson,
Yes.
Mr. Zdanowitz.
Yes.
Great. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Others, are there other proposals that people would like to put on the table for consideration? If not, I have one. Oh, that's Rob. I'll go ahead with Rob first.
Hi, I don't know if I'm stealing your question, Deb, but I figured, I thought someone would bring it up, but no one said anything. So I figured we should talk about the ASK program, right?
Sure.
Okay, so I'll tee it up. I just want to have the board make some decision about that program specifically, because obviously, as everybody knows, we received quite a few emails about people's opinions on the program. And so I think the board needs to decide formally if they want to take the superintendent's recommendation to no longer fund the program, or if we want to actually still fund the program.
Do you wish to make a motion on that?
Sure. I'm happy to make a motion to continue the ASK program in its current form, at least for another year. And I can't remember off the top of my head what the cost of that was. I want to say it was like in the 30-something thousand range. I don't have it right in front of me.
I believe it's just under 75,000. Liz, can you confirm?
Okay, that's a little low, I guess.
I can actually, it's 0.78 full-time positions, which equates to $78,300. That's salary and benefits.
All right. I don't know if the number was important anyway, but I'd make a motion to continue the ASK program for another year.
So there is, thank you. So there is a motion on the table to continue ASK, and I will second that motion. Does anyone have any points for discussion or questions? Sean?
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this up. It's a program that I've seen work. I've recommended students to it. I've seen students get the attention that they desperately need, that maybe was not working for them in a regular education setting with maybe one teacher and 25 students per se. Having 2 teachers allows for more opportunities for students to succeed. It allows for more interactions and ultimately more support. It's a support you often can't get, as I've said, but I've also seen dozens of students graduate from Hall that enrolled in ASK that maybe otherwise would not have. And I guess ultimately what I'm saying is that any kind of support, I guess the last thing we should be doing is pulling away supports in this kind of environment. And I'm running a distance learning or virtual learning classroom myself. And I know having a program like this would I would love to have this option. So I'd love to see it there for Hall kids. And I think Rob kind of said something that really appealed to me as well, is that maybe in another circumstance, but maybe not in the times that we're experiencing now. I know a lot of these kids need support, and I think this is the program to do it. This might be jumping ahead a little bit, but I am concerned about maybe instead of talking about canceling it, as how do we preserve it for when the people who run it now retire and move on? Because obviously it offers something that people like. I think Rob mentioned we got a lot of emails. I don't know how many, but it feels like it was something between 80 and 100. So that's my piece on this. I'd love to hear others' opinions on it.
Thank you, Sean. Do others wish to make comments or ask questions about this proposal?
Deb, I'm not going to spend a lot of time. People know the executive team's unanimous position, which we've said. The only thing I'll say is I still struggle with one of the two high schools getting higher FTE percentages, and it being the high school with less need for free and reduced lunch, with less need for world language. That's not how we operate historically, and that's what we're doing. One of our high schools gets an extra 0.8. So to me, and it's a 0.8 at a certain salary, so it's a social worker. So I think that we could have bigger bang for the buck with a greater number of kids with another social worker at the high schools. That's what we would have recommended. That's my biggest issue with this, is that we are creating inequity. We're not creating, because you didn't create it, but the decision was made, and it's well before your time, to move away from a program at Hall that had letters at Connard, that had letters from people opposing it, but it was a budget situation. The program at Hall was maintained. Now it continues in a school with 33% free and reduced lunch is having less resources devoted to it than a school with 20% free and reduced lunch. That just, it doesn't stand for the equity that West Hartford stands for. I'm sorry, that's my opinion.
And I know we all appreciate you sharing your thoughts on that. So thank you. Mark.
So I guess I've been on the board the longest, obviously, I think. And this has come up before, and we've had this discussion again. I guess if Tom didn't say it, I'm not trying to echo his comments at all, but those are the same types of things that we talked about as a board. This is a different board, and we'll make different decisions, of course. But I do want to say that those are the types of things that we were looking at, is, equity between the two high schools. And it was just something that we discussed, and I remember, and this has been on the chopping block or for discussion for some time now, for the new members. This isn't the first time it came up, and I just give you that visibility so there has been a lot of emails for a very few number of population. Normally, if we get a lot of emails about something, it's a 60% discussion about yes or no, right? Saving something or not. The amount of emails to the amount of people affected, and I'm not making any disparity against the people affected, because I know the value of the program. But the amount of emails versus the people that are involved isn't typical for the communication that we normally get. So that's just out there for consideration. I'm not trying to change anybody's minds. I'm just trying to provide information. So that's all.
Other thoughts or questions on this topic? Lorna.
Hi. So I will be candid. I'm torn on this one. And me being torn is highly influenced because of our current state of affairs in terms of the pandemic. I say that because prior to March, I was leaning I was very much listening to our administrators and their thoughts and knowledge based on why it was proposed to remove the Ask program. And I was very much thinking in line with that. And then boom, the pandemic hit, and then boom, our young people are at home, distance learning, lots of changes, lots of challenges. And so for that reason, me being torn is a matter of really focusing on crisis stabilization and really trying to get things, wanting to support things returning back to baseline and starting off our school year with some semblance of what used to be. And so for that reason, I'm thinking, because of what has been happening for the past several weeks with our young people, impacting our young people, not wanting to give any other reason to view it as another challenging, traumatic event that's happening. I say that to say that I do strongly think that the Ask program needs some type of further exploration, revamping of something, because something clearly was not fully working well for it to be repeatedly put on the table to be removed. And so me being torn is a matter of, do I vote yes to keep it in place now? But if that were the case, the caveat would be for the time being, because something different needs to occur. Or would it be no, because of, again, the recommendations that were made before? But again, what has me torn is because of what state of affairs we are currently in with the pandemic, and a lot of the challenges our young people have already been faced with. So I just wanted full disclosure in terms of where my thoughts are vacillating at this time.
Thank you. Rob?
Hi, I just wanted to respond to Tom and Lorna, and I'm really glad we're having this discussion because I feel like there are a lot of different opinions on the board right now about this program. And I just want to be on record again. Mark's been on the longest, but I do remember, for those of us that aren't brand new, that we did talk about this in the past, and I did wonder, full disclosure, why we were keeping this program, and I wasn't sure. But to Lorna's point, I don't think it necessarily is, and maybe it's just my take on it, that it needs revamping. I get the equity issue from Tom, and I don't disagree with him. But I do think that there are exceptions to the rules sometimes. And if this is a program that is working well, that we shouldn't just get rid of it because it doesn't exist at another school. I think instead it would be like, well, if Conard needs more support in some way, then Conard should get that. It shouldn't be, well, Conard doesn't have this, so let's get rid of it at Hall because Hall's already got the other program anyway, and that's where the administration wants to go. As board members, I think that's where we get to come in and say, well, we don't always have to agree with the administration, right? Like, they make their point, but then the community gets to respond. And what I heard from the community and from lots of other people is that this is a very worthy program. It doesn't, and I didn't get the impression that the administration was cutting it or that it's been on the chopping block many times because of the fact that it needs to change. I always heard that there were a couple of specific teachers that ran the program that were, excellent people and did a great job at it, but that, when they go, the program would die. And to Sean's point, maybe that something should be done so that when that finally happens, the program can continue. But quite frankly, the board at that time will decide what they want to do with it. I just have a hard time saying we shouldn't continue a program just because it doesn't exist somewhere else. I'd rather say put the resources to that school that they need and keep this program, because the community certainly seemed very strong on it. And I know Mark was saying, well, is there really enough, community output for it? I felt like we had a significant amount. It wasn't just 10 emails, 20 emails, 30 emails. I was counting for a while, like Sean, I lost count, but I felt like, based on my tenure on the board, this was something where we had a significant response about. And look, I get it. Like, it was before my time. Mark can speak to this. There was a very contentious board meeting several years ago where there were a lot of specific programs on the chopping block, and there were those constituencies. I watched that meeting. It was, I think, the year before you and I came on the board, Deb, Lorna, and like the Suzuki program parents came out, and other program parents came out. Nobody wants to lose their program, and so I don't want Tom or the staff to think that I was just swayed because a constituency came out for this program. Like I said before, I think there are exceptions to the rules. I was just really taken by some of the people's comments in those emails that I read over and over again about the impact. And I felt that, I don't know about anyone else, but just the fear that you felt of like, well, now this program isn't going to exist anymore. And where are they going to go? And is that going to work for them where they have to go now? And I think, sometimes that's more important when you, as a community, you need to, as a board member, respond to that. And so as much as I consider myself a fiscally responsible person, and I'm sorry this has been so long-winded, that's why I wanted us to talk about it. And it's why I changed my mind about supporting it. I mean, I think that's what we're supposed to do as elected folks, is when you have an opinion, which mine was a while ago, to maybe get rid of this program, that you can change your mind and you're not necessarily a flip-flopper. You're just evolving with your position and saying, I think maybe this is something we should reconsider. And now I'll go quiet.
Thank you. I think Amanda had a question.
Hi, yes, Amanda Aronson. I just wanted to lend my perspective to the discussion if it's helpful before we vote. And I also have been giving this program a significant amount of thought. I care about program structure. I care about strategic planning. And I listened very closely to the administration as they talked about this, and also weighed in all the feedback from people from long before, and also current student feedback as well. And I think that it was a hard decision to be thinking about before the circumstance, but my decision became very clear for me, knowing that we are in the conditions that we're in right now, where we are, student engagement is our top priority. And knowing that we're facing an uncertain fall and an uncertain school year, I believe that we need to keep every tool that we have for student engagement at our disposal. So I understand that this is something that we're going to continue to look at. But for me, this particular year is not the year that I could, in good faith, remove a program for vulnerable students that would help to keep them engaged, especially given the fact that if we have to look at an online environment in the fall, we're going to need all the tools for student engagement that we have, and with familiar faces, with instruction that's going to meet their needs. And they could be life or death situations for kids. They could be the decision makers for whether they stay in school, and whether it's a few kids or, a number of kids. To me, that is not, the number of the kids isn't as important to me as making sure that we use those tools. So this is conditional for me this year, and the conditions that we're in and the uncertainty we face are the drivers for my vote, which will be to support keeping the program in for this particular year and these particular circumstances.
Sean.
Hi, it's more of a, I guess, numbers question going back to the beginning of our conversation. I heard that, I can't remember the number, it said salary and benefits. I'm probably not thinking of something here, but it was my understanding that anyone under, was it a 0.5 or 0.6 maybe, doesn't receive benefits. So I was wondering if the numbers are a little lower, or if that's what they are, and I'm not thinking of another kind of benefit here.
No, they're a little lower for somebody on top step, but the people that are on top step still make the salary of a top step salary. So it's commensurate when you take into account.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Other comments or questions on this proposal? If not, Cammie, would you call the roll? And on this one, a yes vote would be to add back in the ASK program for the 2020-21 school year.
Ms. Aronson?
Hi, Amanda Aronson. I vote yes.
Mr. Levine?
I vote in support of it.
Mr. Payson?
Yes.
Ms. Poland?
Yes.
Dr. Steinberg?
I vote no.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson,
Because of our current state of affairs, I vote yes.
Mr. Zadanowitz.
Because I'm on the public record previously, I vote no.
Thank you.
So the tally, I believe, is 5-2, and the motion passes. Moving on, are there additional proposals for the board to consider? Sean?
Thank you. Sorry for the delay there. We received a presentation not so long ago before COVID-19 happened that I was very impressed with, and that was the math data and the math positions throughout the district. And I really appreciate Superintendent Moore's budget, especially how much it's gone down. But one of them, another support that I could see as essential would be that of the math coach. I think the quantitative data shows that this position has helped our teachers and helped our students. So I guess the long story short, I think I hope I'm doing this right, would be to have a motion or make a motion to return the math coach to the budget and maybe see how that affects it, hoping to still keep it down. But I would love to see that position back in place.
Thank you. So the motion is to add the math coach for the middle school back in. Is there a second on that motion?
Second, Amanda Aronson.
Seconded by Amanda Aronson. And discussion.
If I could, I would just say, I mean, I appreciate the comments on the math coach. It's obviously something we really believed in. It was probably the very last thing that we put in to try to get to a 0.75. But that was aiming at a number, and you guys have the ultimate decision. So I'm not going to speak ill of math coaches. I think it would certainly be used well in the middle school.
Thank you. So I see Sean and then Amanda.
Thanks, Adam. Thank you. I was very impressed with the presentation that you and your team put together for us. I think it was very clear that the math coach was helpful, especially when you guys put the data up and you had different perspectives. I was just hoping you could maybe clear up how would the math coach still be able to help if we continue in what we're doing now in distance learning, and how would maybe the students or teachers still benefit from that?
Sure, I'll defer to Paul on that since we have some of that going on right now, still working. So Paul.
Hi, Paul Vicina. Sorry, my video is eating my internet and crashing me. So the position of the math coach at the secondary level, just to differentiate, it's not necessarily that of an interventionist. It is someone that would be working directly with teachers, would impact students in the classroom directly through model lessons, co-teaching, direct observation that's going to help support pedagogy and the professional practice of our teachers. I greatly appreciate the comments and the support the board has for this. We do feel that we have a proven model at the elementary level that we were looking to expand, and certainly understood the superintendent's recommendation given the financial status of the budget that we're in. But if this is something that is able to make it into the budget, it would be something that would benefit students through ongoing professional learning. And our department supervisors are doing a fantastic job with that right now, relative to kind of bringing everyone up to what does instruction look like in an online environment, and how do we help and support, and that's really what a coach would do, only have the opportunity and the flexibility with their schedule to do so in longer cycles. Typically it's kind of the 6-week cycle. That's kind of a really once over the world description. If there's something more specific, I'm happy to answer.
Sean? You're on mute, Sean.
Got me. Sorry, just to follow up. I guess I just want to be crystal clear. Thank you, Paul. Could the math coach, I guess, function effectively if we were still doing distance learning in the fall? Not that I'm hoping for that, but I just really want to make sure that, if we put our money here, that yes, the math coach can still provide support in a really effective way, and that I guess I heard an executive team, discussion before. Has the executive team, I guess, what would the executive team, sorry to put you on the spot, think about a math coach in a distance learning model?
Go ahead, Paul. Do you want to talk about it first, and then I'll jump in?
Sure. Yeah. No, I apologize. I was just pausing to see if you wanted to start. I do think that in a model that we're looking forward to and interesting to contemplate, because we're still kind of brainstorming where we might be in the fall. But I would certainly say that anyone who can be directly involved with our teachers and directly there, kind of also in the classroom settings, whether those classroom settings are virtual or live, is certainly going to be an asset. Looking, and I'm sure Tom can add some comments. When we look forward to September and we think about it, there's a lot of research that's out there right now on just any number of needs that we have. So I wouldn't pretend that a math coach wouldn't be helpful, but I wouldn't be fair if I didn't say there are any number of different things that we want to look at. A lot of the research, I'm sure we'll have a presentation to you at some point when we talk about what our reintegration plan is, but a lot of the research is talking about, different social emotional needs for children, the idea that they're going to move from something that's very much isolation, and there'll probably be a long honeymoon period when they come back, but then we're gonna see a wave of potential behaviors. So that's a need for us. We don't know what social distancing brings up and how our ratios with students are going to look. So there are quite a number of needs. Is a math coach going to be helpful relative to math instruction? 1,000% yes. I'm super excited. Like I said, this is something I want to see in our budget, and I leave it to you and to our superintendent to talk about the right timing to balance all the different needs that we have. But we will make excellent use of the resource if it's provided.
Yeah, and I don't have much to add to that. Paul covered most of it. I think when we look at the fall, we're looking at completely at the unknowns, and I think any one of the board members, I always wait for the question at the board table that I give to Gretchen, because the question usually comes up from the board: are we doing enough for mental health? And to answer honestly, my answer is always, I would like to do more. I think that's obviously what we'd want. In an ideal world, we'd have a school psychologist and a social worker at every building. I think this math coach is something that we, of course, will use, and it will help kids. And I didn't want to take it out of any budget. Paul's had such a good plan of how we integrate math coaching through the levels. He's been advocating for this for a while. The ads that we've made in special ed over the past couple of years. So that's the problem when you get down to a budget at this level, and we're talking about a tiny percentage increase, because we all know things that we think would help kids, because they will. There is zero doubt in my mind, whether we're online or in school, having a math coach will improve math instruction at the middle school level. It's as simple as that. So these are that kind of push-pull. I didn't want to take it out of the budget. So again, Sean, I appreciate you bringing it up. I just don't know what the fall holds.
Amanda, and then Mark.
Thank you, Amanda Aronson. I also wanted to remind ourselves that one of the things that we had talked about with regard to this math coach was that it did give us one more tool in helping to reduce that achievement gap, and that remains important to me, as I know it does, is also important to many of us. And I think in this, having taught the English and social studies in those subject areas, if we were to have to continue with an online learning environment for longer than we would like, when we're looking at all of the grade levels and whether curriculum is linear or not, those subjects are easier to work with. But I think when it comes to math, especially, that the more support that we have with putting heads together, thinking about what that instruction looks like, how can we deliver that, I think that we're going to need all the help that we can get to make sure that that stays strong, because that's trickier in an online environment in a lot of ways. So I am in support. I know that must have been very difficult for you to put that on the list of things to amend. And I'm so appreciative of the things that are on that list, because I know you tried hard to stay away from anything that would affect kids in programs. So the fact that we're talking about it again, I know that you're glad about that, and it's something that I think would be helpful, not just for some of our original intent, which is to support all of our students, but also to continue to work on that achievement gap and to give us even more support should this online environment continue longer, with a subject that is going to need a lot of heads being put together to figure out how to best deliver that in this current context.
Thank you. Mark?
So I look at this as a double-edged sword, because I did not anticipate any of this coming into today, talking about ask and the math tutor, and quite honestly, I didn't, consider even the, prior proposals that I've talked about with the pay to play, given certain circumstances. And I looked at what Tom had presented as a new budget, and I agreed with it. And now that we're talking about it, but I do have to make this comment, because I've been through this before, and I've touched the stove several times. This has to go to town council, and we have to be able, if they say cut another X, we're going to have to do that. And where does that come? I don't know. We collectively have to do that if that comes the case. If the town council wants to present a zero budget, we have to look very closely at where we're coming at. And I am one, again, my longevity serves me, is that I'm one guy that, and Paul could attest to this, is that I've always looked at, and I think it was my second year on the board, where we had a huge dip in mathematics, and it came down to, you can't correct anything that if you don't manage it and measure it, manage versus measure. And we saw a big dip in mathematics in grade 7 in KP, and those tests came around, and Paul put in the right changes, and we were able to correct that number. But we measured it, we managed it, and it happened to be mathematics that year. It was a big dip, and I think it finally got off the radar after, I think it was 6th or 7th grade, and it finally got off the radar last year as far as a dip. So maybe some of you haven't seen it. So mathematics in my heart has always been close, and I don't want to fall behind. And these kids, students that need that extra help, again, I think it needs repeating, but I'm a fiscal conservative. But when we talk about the classroom and being able to help those students, that's where I like the bang for the buck, quite honestly, and that's where I think the rubber meets the road. And so that's why this was always a tough one for me, but I'm also a realist, and I know that if we have to make cuts going forward after we present this to the town council, where and how are we going to do it? So remember how these numbers came to us. I know that's a long answer, and I know that it's ambiguous. I'm supportive of the math tutor at the end of the day, but just we have to keep in mind how we're going to be able to balance this budget if town council comes in with a zero.
I think I saw Sean had another question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of a comment and a comment. So I just want to say I appreciate Mark's insight. I am learning the political process as we go through this, and I appreciate, you know, like the understanding that, you know, we kind of set something, then the town council approves it, and I guess I'll be able to, you know, put my head on my pillow tonight if I know what I do what's best for kids. And going into, not to say that you wouldn't, but going into this next school year and beyond, and talking to my math colleagues, I think it's completely reasonable that we do see what some people, you know, call summer slide or a slide in performance, because these kids have been adjusting to distance learning. So have our teachers been adjusting to this new environment. And it's my understanding, I could be wrong, but state testing, I believe, has been kind of canceled or delayed. So we might kind of lose that measurement. So like I said, with supports that we've talked about earlier in the night, this is a tough time for teachers and students. And I think it would be wonderful to kind of reinforce what we have in place so that when we come back and everything is so-called normal, that we are ready to rock and roll again. And I think in talking to my math colleagues that now more than ever, they need guidance, not just the students, but the teachers need help as well. And I love the idea of this position, because math is such a complicated thing to teach, and it's even more so online. So I know I'm preparing for the worst, but I really think this is the position that can help those people that need that help. Thank you.
Sean, if I could, I appreciate those comments, because I think that one thing that we have to accept is we're not going to have metrics for at least a year, maybe for 2 years, where we don't have testing. We won't have those same metrics. But the one thing we know is this is not good for the achievement gap. This is not going to help the achievement gap, what's happening right now. We're doing everything we can to reach kids. Gretchen's special ed teachers are unsung heroes to a level that I can't even begin to speak about what they're doing one-on-one with people. And that's not to besmirch any other teachers. But the fact is, this will exacerbate, not just in West Hartford, but nationally. And we all know this, the haves and the have-nots. So that is certainly our big concern coming back and in the future, is that gap. So I appreciate saying that, especially in math, certainly.
Other comments or questions on this proposal? If not, Cammie, could you call the roll on this? And the motion again is to add back in the math coach at the middle school level. So a yes on this one means we would be adding this math coach back in at a cost of $85,000.
Amy Rogers. Aronson.
Amanda Aronson, my vote is yes.
Levine.
Hi, my vote is not in favor of this.
Mr. Payson.
Yes.
Ms. Poland.
Yes.
Dr. Steinberg.
Yes.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson.
Yes.
Mr. Danowitz.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-1.
Yep.
Are there, thank you, everybody. Are there other proposals for the budget for the upcoming school year? Just going to give it a minute in case anybody wants to put a question mark in the chat box.
Once we're done with the wait, Deb, Liz will be able to post up where we are now and what you'll actually be voting on.
That's perfect. I think we're done with the wait. So let's go ahead and take a look at where we stand now.
Did I overpromise, Liz? Can you call that up? There we go.
Yep, she's got it.
I can do it. I'm just a little slow. Sorry.
It's okay. It's all right.
You were supposed to entertain them in between, Tom.
Oh.
Can you see that? Can you see that screen?
It's very small. Can you?
Nope, you've got to go.
I think you have to hit the arrow.
Okay, hold on one second. I'm going to do the entire screen.
Yeah.
That
Still
there?
didn't work.
Nope.
Still not there.
It's still not there. I'm sorry. Give me 1 second.
You guys may need to come out of grid view. I can see it fine. You may need to come out of grid view and look at it.
Okay.
Oh,
Got it.
okay.
Yep.
So-
Go
Thank
ahead,
you,
Liz.
Paul.
Sorry.
What you're saying is it's not Liz's fault, it's ours.
There we go.
All right, you
there
have
we
it
go.
now? Okay,
Yes, now we do.
terrific. So what you have here, if we start at the top, is our total budget from 1920, the current year, at 168.8. What we started with this evening, which was Tom's revised proposal of 170, which had an increase of 1.3 million or 0.75%. And to the right, you can see the related FTEs. The 3 amendments that were adopted are listed below. Those 3 amendments increase the budget by $228,000. So the budget that you'll be voting on tonight is $170,301,528. That's an increase from the current year of 0.89%.
Thank you.
I'm going to
Try to
take
get
that down.
Thank you.
Very good.
I think I can get us back on grid for me. Okay. There we go. That's better. Are there additional questions? I think some people probably want to make comments before we do the vote, but before we move to that, are there any questions that are remaining? Okay. Mark.
All right, thank you. So I guess I'll get into the politics a little bit about this. You know, I obviously by vote, you know where I stand. I know the town is coming in, I believe, at 1.8%. We're still coming below that. I guess I'm open to discussion. Where do we see this going forward? And are we going to have to revisit this? And if we do, I'm not asking for solutions, but it's something that I believe is, I don't know. I don't know where we stand, quite honestly. And I know they asked to cut, and I know the town's coming to 1.8, and we're coming in much lower than that, but we own a bigger portion of the budget. So I guess the political question is, you know, something we have to think about. Maybe a comment, really not a question. So I just put that out there.
Amanda?
Hi, Amanda Aronson. I share Mark's comments. I think that is the reality of the situation, but I'm comfortable doing our best work tonight and then taking it one step at a time.
Thank you. Ari?
I don't know if Tom can answer this for me, but I think it's along the same lines of what Mark was referring to. Is the issue for me is, and given that I'm new and Mark is obviously a veteran at this, my question is, so we vote on this budget and we send it to the town. Does the town typically accept our budget as is, or are they going to say, we'll only give you this much more? And then do we have to then go back and have a discussion about what needs to be cut from the amendments? I'm just wondering what the process is if we vote for this current budget.
Yeah, and I don't know if Deb wants to take that, if you want me to. The truth is it's happened both ways. So in the past, we've had it just pass the town council as the board passed it, and there's been other years where we had 200,000 cut, 400,000 cut, and there was one year, some years ago, with about a $500,000 cut, where we have to then come back. I'll make recommendations, but again, it'll be you voting on those things that you think, either my recommendations or your own recommendations. But it's difficult at that point because it's all things you made that decision that we support this, and then all of a sudden you have to make those shifts. So that's the difficult part. Deb, I didn't want to step on your toes there.
No, you said it. So like Tom mentioned, it could go either way. And then, so anything you wanted to say to our colleagues on the town council to help support this budget, that would be beneficial for us and our students. Other questions before we move to any statements that people might want to make? And you don't have to make a statement either. I don't want anyone to feel any pressure. All right, let's go ahead and move on with statements. And if you would like to make one, just give me a holler by using the chat box. Lorna.
Yes, thank you. In terms of statements, in terms of the budget, I just want to highlight again what we clearly all are aware of is all that our young people have been going through in terms of the current pandemic, and how our responsibility of being board members is certainly in terms of policy, is certainly in terms of budget, but also just the whole overall well-rounded functionality of our young people, and really wanting to support as seamless as a transition as possible in the incoming school year, however that is defined. I certainly recall the initial proposed budget by our superintendent in March, and certainly appreciate the great efforts that were made to bring it to where it is now. However, I certainly know that if we were in a position to do all that we could do, the budget would be a lot higher, but we certainly know we have to be fiscally responsible, and I do support that. And so with the number now being of a proposed increase of just 0.89%, I think that really, again, shows how much we're trying to do what we can do to get the budget as low as possible. And I just want us to vote recognizing our priorities, and our priorities are with our young people. Our priorities are in sustaining their educational system, which helps to pave the way for their future, for their foundation. And so in that, with that in mind, I certainly am in favor of the proposed budget, as has been discussed and said. And I certainly encourage our colleagues to take thought of, again, why we're doing what we're doing and who it is for.
Thank you. Sean.
Just a comment. This is my first budget that I've helped review. I realize that Tom and his staff do 99.9% of the work, and then we get to come in and add and change it and talk about it, and we get the easy part, but it's still kind of difficult for me. So thank you for making the modifications and adjustments and being open to the discussion. But to me, this is still a very fluid budget. So I hope that when our colleagues in the town council get this budget, they realize that there's a lot of balls still up in the air. That's a lot of motion in the budget related to contracts, maybe like the transportation contract or money from the state and federal government. There's a lot of unknowns. So I see the 0.89%, but I also see a lot more questions than I have answers. And then lastly, just wanted to, I guess, wish our fellow students on the board and at Hall and Connor good luck on their modified AP exams. I know those are coming up, and yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
I think Mark had a question or a comment.
Yeah, thank you. Tom, can you speak to where we would be given to this pandemic? Can you kind of give us a pathway to where we would be in the budget next year and what kind of increases? Because, we're coming down to, 0.89, I guess it is. How does that affect next year's budget? Because that's my real concern, in kicking the can down the road for less of a better term. And just where are we going to stand? You think, and I certainly don't anticipate you knowing the exact answer, but you have the best insight on that, or maybe Liz. Where do you think we come out next year in a bigger budget when things settle down and we are no longer in this pandemic?
Yeah, and I'm happy to have Liz talk about our strategy to kind of separate so we don't dig that big of a hole. But this, and I'm glad for your question, and Sean, I take your point well. Normally at the end of a budget, this is the night when me and my executive team celebrate, and Liz or Chip when he was here, because it's a year's worth of work and you're done. And now we know what we have for next year and we're set. And nobody feels that way right now, not only because of social distancing, but because of everything, as you say, Mark, is really an educated guess. This is kind of assuming a situation that we know about, but we don't know A, how much we're going to have to spend next year, because what does the school year look like? I think we all have scenarios that we can envision for high school, even if we had to do a blend. We can get that kind of in our heads, even if there were closures and even if there were phases back and forth, we can get there. Middle school, kind of the same. Elementaries, we know that the country to reopen business is dependent on elementary school because it's a place where their kids would be. And we don't know what the recommendation for class sizes will be. We don't know, but we also don't know if we have enough classrooms to meet that recommendation. We don't know what the lunch waves look like at the high school, because we have 2 large high schools with 420 person lunches. And so that's already a large gathering. So now when I say I don't know, the truth is we're planning for all these things in the background. But Andy put in an order for thousands of masks. Trust me, it's a seller's market right now. Thermometers and kind of, high-end thermometers to check temperatures, if that's something we're going to have to do. We've been pricing out all those things like that. And that's just the beginning, never mind who's going to do those. So you bring up exactly, Mark, what we're worried about next year. But then that means we have a following year. And we don't know if the economy bounces back quickly from this, because this is not something that the economy faltered. This is something that was done to the economy. So does it bounce back quickly, or are we in a recession? Or, heaven forbid, are we in a depression? And if we're at either of those things, we are at a cataclysmic event for West Hartford Public Schools in terms of what we can do, how we can pay for it, what the tax base will allow. And so those are all scenarios that we're going to be looking at. And that's kind of how we're planning it out. And that's the importance of the non-lapsing fund. And Liz, if you just want to talk about the non-lapsing fund very quickly, that might help people here too.
Certainly. As you know, we are making use of a non-lapsing fund this year. State law allows us to put up to 2% of our budget into an account to be used for the next year. At this point in time, as you saw in our budget adjustment, we're anticipating approximately 1.5 million will be using that. Should our surplus vary from that, if we are able to save more through some of our negotiations, we'll use that in a step down fashion, or have the ability to do that in future years to try to mitigate the percentage increase that we see. As we talked about previously, one of the risks of using funds from a retiree health reserve or a non-lapsing account is you dig a little bit of a hole to come out of the next year. And so what we will do is have a planned use of phasing those uses down so that we won't see an untenable percentage increase.
Tom, I have a question. Could you remind us how many positions are we cutting in this budget if we add in, as is now on the table, adding in the math coach? How many positions net are we cutting?
I believe it's 13.8. Sorry, Liz, at 13.8 or 12.8?
I think it's, so we originally were cutting 10.48 positions, and I think you added back 1.78. So it's around 9 positions that we're reducing. 9
positions at this point.
Yep.
Thank you.
And that's again, the majority of those positions that are in flux are those kind of TAs and paras with individual special education students. That's really, I mean, because there are cuts, but then there are those ads that we have no choice over. So if we were looking at how many less teaching positions and otherwise we're looking at, we're probably at about 20, but then you have to add in all of the positions that we had to add this year. So if we were going budget to budget from what was proposed, we've eliminated about 24 positions, but we had to put back 15 positions because of one-on-one pairs and TAs that are required because of special education needs, because of the additions we had this year.
Thank you. Other comments? No one else wants to make a comment on the budget before we move forward? Okay, well, I will make my comments then before we move to the vote. Oh, sorry, is that Amanda? Are you accidentally unmuting or intentionally
Sorry,
unmuting?
I thought you were going to call the vote, and I'm an A, so I was just preparing.
It looks like Rob has a question or a comment. Go ahead.
I thought some other folks were going to say some things, and I guess not. So this is my third budget. Can't believe that I'm a veteran now, but I just wanted to say thanks to Tom and senior staff. This is often a night where I give Tom a lot of hell. I'm glad I keep smiling. And obviously the COVID-19 has colored my I guess my response this year. But for me as a board member, especially for your new folks, I mean, this to me is like one of the most important nights of the whole year. Exactly for what Tom said, because it's a culmination of so much work that they've done. And to Sean's point, we do kind of get to come in and cherry pick and kind of poke holes or add and subtract how we want. And I can totally understand how that would lead to frustration, because they have a document that they very much support, and then we can potentially change that. But that's our role. That's our role as board members, and we do put time into it. And I think that's why we need to make the changes. I'm very comfortable with a 0.89 increase. I mean, normally Tom's trying to get us to like 3% or less. So I would just say, as I've I think often kind of said in recent months or even longer, that while we may be the biggest line item in the town budget, generally the town's a little more high on the hog than us, right? So I would, and I guess in a way, answering a question that was asked earlier about like, well, what happens if they do kick back a number to us saying it has to be reduced. I've seen that happen too, and Tom's never happy about it. And so I would just say, as Mark said when we talk politics a little bit, that I would ask our majority to talk to the town majority, and Mark and I can talk to the town minority and really say like, hey, support this budget and don't ask us to cut it. If you feel there needs to be cuts made, look in the mirror, town council. I've been my hand's been slapped. I don't know if I can use Mark's analogy of touch the stove, but in years past, when I've mentioned the town council, a couple of people thought I shouldn't do that. But while we're board members and we don't have purview over the town budget, we're still citizens of this town, and I think we're completely within our rights to say that, hey, the board has put forward a very reasonable budget. I feel very comfortable with that this year. I don't want a pandemic to always help us reduce our budget to this level. I would hope that we could just get here without that. But that if the town were to come back and suggest that we should lower our budget, I would hope before that would ever happen, those of us that have relationships with members on the council to do exactly what we should do, is pick up the phone and say, hey, please accept this budget, and this is why. And that if there's some concern from some council members that our budget as a town is still too high, that they not look at us and they look at other places within the town budget to find those things. The reason I voted against the math coach thing, and I was only one, is because my fear is that, and I think Mark was alluding to this, is that the town may come back. Math coach is a very laudable idea, but at some point you have to make a hard decision on a cut. And I thought maybe that's one that we don't include, and Tom will certainly sneak it in there next year, probably, when we're in a better situation. So I would leave the new folks with that message that, you are our advocates. The Tom and the senior staff do what they can, but we're the public faces. So, reach out to the council members, respond to any community members and say, this is a budget that you stand behind, assuming that you're voting for it tonight. And that if the town has concerns about the impact on the community, they need to find the answers elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'll make my comments then. We've talked a lot about how this budget is a best guess or an educated guess, but what's important for all of us to realize and for our fellow town residents to realize is that this budget is a priorities document. What this budget does is it reflects a balance between what the board thinks is important for our students, our staff, and our families in a way that's responsible and responsive to the economic difficulties our town and state are expected to face over the next year. West Hartford prides itself rightly on our schools, and as Board of Education members, it's our responsibility to look after those schools, to be attentive to the needs of our students and our families. Now this budget, after we pass it this evening, will move forward for the town council to consider. And I know our colleagues on the town council are taking some hard look at items on their side, items that fall under their purview as well. They're considering some deep cuts, as are we, as we've discussed with the reduction in positions. And they're proposing an increase of, I think, 1.92% in their departments. This proposal, which serves our children, our schools, comes in at 0.89%. For this 0.89% increase, we maintain our commitments to our children in a time when we know the need is growing, not shrinking. I know our town supports our schools, and so on behalf of the rest of the board, our students, staff, and families, I thank our town residents for that support. And I urge my colleagues on the board to support this budget, and I urge our town to support it as well. And now we can move forward with the vote.
Tammy Rogers, Ms. Aronson,
Amanda Aronson, my vote is yes.
Mr. Levine,
For the first time in 3 years, my vote is yes.
Mr. Payson,
Yes.
Ms. Pollitt,
Yes.
Dr. Steinberg,
Yes.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson,
Yes.
Mr. Zdanowitz.
Rob has a better memory than me, and I can't remember if I voted for a budget or not. I know I voted, I think, for one in the last 8 years. So yes, I'm voting for this budget.
Thank you. The budget passes unanimously, 7-0. Thank you, all of you, for a very engaged discussion, for your compassion and your responsiveness to our town residents, to our students, our staff, and our families in town. And thank you to Tom, Liz, and the whole team for your thoughtful presentation of the budget, the budget revisions. And I know that we're putting our trust in you to move this forward in the best way to take care of all of our students and children. So thank you. All right, so forging on ahead. We do not have any items for new business. We can move directly to staff communications and reports, and starting with the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your deliberation, for your questions, and for your service really to the kids of our community. And I liked what you said, Deb. A budget is a reflection of our priorities and our support for our kids. And as Rob said, this is sometimes a point where he looks at me and I say, it's okay to disagree with being disagreeable. And the only thing I'll say, Rob, as much as you think we go at it, you should see me and Vicenius in the executive team meetings when we're crafting the budget, and Gretchen and everybody else as we go through, because everybody has their list of priorities and we have to come to one number. And I just want to thank the executive team as we go through here for always really advocating for kids and doing everything that they can. So I'm very lucky to be surrounded by a board as supportive of all of you, and also to have such talented people that I get to work with every day. Normally on the night of the budget adoption, I don't say anything for a superintendent's report, but I do have two things I'd be remiss if I didn't mention. One, once again, U.S. News and World Report ranks both of our high schools in the top 3%, both named as top high schools in America. Hartford County, Connecticut, everything, the accolades that we get. And I really appreciate both Dan and Julio in their comments. Both said this isn't just a function of their schools. It's a function of everything that happens going up to the high schools. And there's not a community that looks like us that's on this list. In Connecticut, there are very few in the country that look like us as far as comprehensive high schools, with the level of need that we have, with the level of diversity that we have, still seeing a level of achievement and striving that is just tremendous. So congratulations to both. To our seniors, I want to say congratulations on making some decisions as we close in on May 1st. And also, I know there has been, I would say that the executive team and myself speak an hour a day basically about things. Basically, graduation takes about an hour of time. In addition to that, I'm talking to other superintendents across the state. The governor's office, Department of Public Health, will continue to do that, and we're going to have some outreach. Ann McKernan went from chairing our committee that looked at late school start times to now she's going to chair a committee to look at graduations at both schools. So I like to give Ann those easy committees that nobody's ever going to complain about, and I'll just blame her at the end for anybody that's upset. But you know, both high school principals have been engaging. I'll continue to engage, as will members of the executive team, and we're going to do the best thing that we can to keep people safe and to recognize our kids. So especially to Kenya and Isabel, I do feel your pain, as you know. One thing I'd be remiss, and Rosina just sent this to me. Friday, May 1st is School Lunch Heroes Day. And this is something that we talk about our heroes and, you know, certainly our teachers and the work that they're doing. Our first responders, I can't thank enough. Our doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals, the people that work in our grocery stores, the people that are delivering food to us, but the people that are delivering those school lunches for us and the cafeteria workers across not just West Hartford, but the state and the country that are keeping kids fed, they deserve some recognition too. And Friday, May 1st is School Lunch Heroes Day. So if we could make signs, take a video, take a picture, thanking these heroes. If you want to just post it yourself, you can tag at New England Dairy, who's sponsoring the contest, with the hashtag School Lunch Hero Day. Or if you want to just take a picture of your sign and share it with Rosina Haskins, that would be email it to Rosina Haskins at whps.org, and we'll put together a West Hartford compilation to thank these people that are doing so much. And really, from the beginning, and I should thank so many of you that I know I've seen out volunteering too, because we've had volunteers too, but our own workers that are making sure kids are getting what they need and families are getting what they need. So thank you to those people. And, you know, let me just say, it's not Friday, May 1st yet, but I can't thank you all enough because what you've done for our kids is tremendous. So with that, that's it for the superintendent's report. You're on mute, Deb.
Indeed. Sorry about that.
All
The
right.
next item is staff reports and board discussions, and I don't think we have anything under that agenda item. So
Nope.
we will move on to routine matters. And the first routine matter, the only routine matter, is the approval of the minutes. So looking for a motion to approve the minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting of April 7th, 2020. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Amanda Aronson.
Thank you, Amanda. Is there a second?
Second, Sean Payson.
Thank you, Sean. Any discussion on the minutes? And we all received a revised copy. Excuse me. Any discussion on the minutes, Mark?
Well, I just think it's important that we receive the revised minutes, but it's always important to discuss what was changed.
Thank you. Amanda, would you take us through some of the changes?
Yes, they were, Cammie does a terrific job with the minutes. There weren't any content changes at all. They were just things that we changed with regard to punctuation or very slight changes in, grammar or things that we wanted to smooth out. So nothing substantive.
Thank you for that. Further discussion? If not, let's go ahead and do a roll call on the minutes as well, which will be easier for our viewers.
Ms. Aronson,
Amanda Aronson, my vote is yes.
Mr. Levine,
Yes.
Mr. Payson,
Yes.
Ms. Poland,
Yes.
Dr. Steinberg,
Yes.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson,
Yes.
Ms. Daniels.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 7-0. Moving on to information and reports. And the first item is board members, communications and reports from other boards and organizations. Does anyone have anything that they would wish to share at this time? Lorna?
Yes, I just want to say glad that we were able to unanimously support the budget. I really am also glad about the robust conversation discussion. And I just encourage for us to continue to do that moving forward. And I speak not only to our board, but just collectively for our town, our state, our country, our world, because we clearly know that what we have been experiencing with the pandemic has been like Pandora's box. A lot of challenges that were already there have surfaced. And certainly this has touched on equity and inequity. And I think it's important for us to be aware of that because at some point in time, things will stabilize again and people will be able to return to their comfortable normal. However, many individuals, many households, many communities that were struggling before may return to that level of struggling. And I think the compassion that we have shown and described in supporting others, that level of compassion needs to continue moving forward, not only for our young people, but for our middle-aged, our seniors, all throughout. But certainly just want to keep this energy moving forward in terms of collective community working, the collective spirit of the community working together for a greater good, in spite of the challenges we're faced with.
Thank you. Other comments? I'll share. This is not necessarily from another board or organization, but for the public to know that our state has gotten approval to move forward with what's called pandemic EBT. And that is a federal program that will allow free and reduced lunch students to receive extra funds for their families for food for their homes. So it's going to impact about 270,000 children in Connecticut across the state. And those who are already on the SNAP program, which is what we used to call food stamps, will automatically get an extra deposit into their EBT, their SNAP debit card. I think it should be in about 2 or 3 weeks, and that should average about $267, which will go a long way to helping families put food on the table. If you're not already on SNAP, but you are a free and reduced lunch kid, then the state will mail you an EBT card. And also, if you're getting one, you probably do qualify for SNAP, so you should go ahead and sign up for that. So just wanted to share that information. I know that's going to benefit a lot of students in our district, and so look for that to come. Are there other reports from other boards and organizations? Or other information and discussions? Okay, if not, we will move to non-staff communications and report and the reports from student board representatives. And we'll start with Kenya.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You can hear me, right?
Yep.
Okay. So the Conard community made a thank you video, as I mentioned, our last meeting, and it's posted on our Twitter at Conard CHS. So as Mr. Moore was mentioning before, it's just to thank our first responders and our essential workers, parents, doctors, everyone who's out there putting their health at risk to keep us at home and safe. Some announcements that the students received this week. Both junior and senior proms have been canceled due to uncertain future distancing, social distancing protocols. Also, there are no final exams for this year. And as mentioned before, our AP exams are in 2 weeks, so we're preparing using our resources such as AP Classroom, taking practice tests, practice essays, and having extra conferences with our teachers as well. And our seniors are continuing to make their decisions. And for Conard, we have an Instagram account, and it's Conard Class of 2020. So you can see the student, their major, and the school that they're going to. Thank you.
Kenya, can I put you on the spot? Have you made a decision about next year?
Yes, I'll be attending UConn.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I think we have some UConn fans around my grid, so great news. All right, Isabella, you're up.
Hello, everybody. So as Kenya mentioned, we received communication from our administration last week about prom and finals and all that stuff. And also that we have the option to make individual classes pass-fail. And yeah, so that's an option that we are being offered for our final grade at the end of the semester. Other than that, the Conard Solo Choir created a virtual performance of a song called Unclouded Day. And that's you can find that on the WeHa News website. But the Hall Choraliers have been working on one too, and that should be coming out later this week. And it's actually a really cool educational opportunity because we've been able to work with our teacher in our office hours to see how he's been editing all of the videos together. So it's really cool. So keep your eyes open for that. And then I do also want to acknowledge all the seniors who've had to make their college decisions without being able to go to their campuses to visit for their admitted students days. And I can speak from experience, that's a pretty difficult thing to have to do. And we also have an Instagram page that's sharing everybody's major and everybody's major and where they will be attending. And so I think that's a really great way to sort of stay connected as a community in this time. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And I'll put you on the same spot I put Kenya on.
I haven't decided yet. I'm working on that.
Okay, good luck.
Thank you.
And good luck to everyone who still has, I think, 3 days now before the final decision needs to be made. I know this is a really, really difficult year for that. And so just I know whatever you decide will work out well. Mark, you had a comment or question?
Yeah, Isabella, you said something, you know, my kids made me join Instagram, and I gotta tell you, seeing again, I'm a hog dad, so forgive me, Connor, but I'm attached to the hall, and I love seeing where all the kids are going and their decisions. I don't know, it kind of makes it just exciting, and I love that, and every day there's 4 or 5 more students, even more sometimes, and it's great. If you're not, you know, I should attach Kenya to Connor too. And you know what? In saying that, I will. It's amazing because I love seeing kids, like, you know, wherever they're doing, whatever they're doing, join the military, wherever they're going, it's exciting and I love it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Mark, because those aren't run by us; those are run by students, which I think is great that they're working with each other. And you know, as a senior dad, I know that too. And I do think it's special that they're also, it's not just about colleges and majors, it's kids that are working, kids that are taking a gap year, kids that are entering the military. And that's special for those kids, that all the kids kind of coming together, because I spoke to a lot of seniors yesterday. I've been stopping in on classes when I get invited. And often this is that one of the things that I hate that seniors are missing is this is that kind of time where all the stuff kind of melts away that's gone on over the years, and you're just kind of together as a group. And they unfortunately don't have that, at least in person now. So these are the kind of things that bring kids together that I think are really important. So thank you, Isabel and Kenya, and to the kids that have organized that at both schools.
I have to say I'm not on Instagram, but I may poke around. I may have to poke around on there. Thank you so much. All right, future business. Announcement of future meeting dates. Our next 2 meetings are next Tuesday, May 5th. It's a regular Board of Education meeting at 7 p.m. Via Google Meets. And Tuesday, May 19th, also a regular Board of Education meeting at 7 p.m. via Google Meets. Do we have any requests for future agenda items? Okay, and I don't know if we have any visitors. We would accept comments from visitors at the end of the meeting. Does not appear that we do. Okay.
There were some people earlier, but nobody now.
Okay, well, anyone who has comments, you know how to get in touch with all of us. You can email us at boardmembers@whps.org. Seeing no comments from visitors, we do not have an executive session. I will accept a motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mark Zdanowitz, seconded by Lorna. And all those in favor of adjourning the meeting signify by saying aye. Aye. Super. Meeting is adjourned at 8:47 p.m. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. See you next week.